Hi everyone, I'm Alexis. I'm 16 and I fence and play soccer in New York, where I'm also a high school student. I'm excited to be here today with Olympian Maia Shibutani. Anxiety is something that I'm working to manage with clinicians at the Child Mind Institute. It's an honor to speak with you, Maya, for the Child Institute's You Got This campaign. Let's get to it.
Thank you, Alexis.
How did you first become aware of your struggles with anxiety, and at what point do you think you realized it was impacting your life so significantly?
I feel like I became more aware of my anxiety actually as I got older. So I started skating when I was 4 years old, and I started competing when I was around six. So it was pretty common for me to associate my anxiety with just normal butterflies around performing. But it's really in recent years where, as I'm moving around in the world, I feel like I can better identify some of that tightness in my chest as anxiety.
Yeah, I feel that all the time right before I compete. So I totally relate to that. How do you think you initially approached seeking help and support, and what resources or strategies did you find most beneficial?
I'm so fortunate because in my background of figure skating, I'm part of a team. My teammate is my older brother, Alex. And so, what I found really helpful is being able to share how I'm feeling with the people around me. And so, when we were kids and we get nervous before we skated, we'd be able to talk about it. We had our parents who were super supportive. But then in recent years, really building a good support system with friends. But then, whenever I don't feel comfortable speaking with someone, writing things down has really helped me a lot.
Um, how do you think you balance the demands of your career and taking care of your mental health?
Balance is something that we're all trying to achieve and figure out. I'm definitely a work in progress, but something that I'm very mindful about is the fact that I can't do my best work or do my job if I'm not taking care of myself. So, remembering the basics about trying to get enough sleep, drink enough water, and be physically active. And a lot of the work that I'm doing now, I'm spending more time at my computer, I'm traveling quite a bit, but taking the time to go for walks, stretch, that really helps.
I totally agree. um, have you encountered any obstacles or setbacks as a result of your anxiety, and how did you navigate through them?
So, one of the things that has made me anxious in recent years is that I have a food allergy. I'm allergic to peanuts and tree nuts. And in 2018, I had quite a few reactions, and that made me nervous to go and spend time with friends at restaurants. I had to be more comfortable with standing up for myself and saying and mentioning. Sometimes I used to feel a bit awkward about saying, like, oh, I have a food allergy, and checking if what I was eating was okay. But I think that just advocating for myself has allowed me to feel less anxious because I'm taking ownership of the situation. It's not that I'm an inconvenience, I just have to look out for myself in that way.
My brother actually has the same allergies.
Okay, how do you manage that with your brother?
He's been learning how to. He's younger than me, so he's learned how to advocate for himself and talk like just let the waiters know. Oh yeah, I'm allergic to peanuts and tree nuts, or and just being aware for himself, so that when it's his time to like go out on his own, and my parents are there to remind him, oh, don't forget to make sure that these things don't have nuts. He can do it for himself.
That's so important because it can be a little nerve wracking sometimes to speak up or to, if you're in a location and someone's eating nuts, to either say something or move away because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but really safety comes first. And so I'm sure you're a great older sister.
Um, I hope so. I don't know if he thinks so. um, Um, are there any particular moments in like competitions specifically where anxiety was particularly challenging for you?
I feel like what helps me when I'm performing is putting things into perspective. I try to lead with gratitude because when there are high stakes situations, I'm there because I've put in a lot of hard work and I've earned my way there. So certainly at the Olympics, there are a lot of nerves when you're competing at that huge world stage. But at the same time, I focus in on my breath and what I can do, trust my training and try and enjoy the moment for what it is.
Yeah, that all sounds like great advice. I always get so scared before I go to compete, and it's really bad. um, role do you think mental health support should play in training and the training and development of other young athletes?
I feel like the conversation has improved so much where mental health wasn't talked about quite as much when I was coming up as an athlete. So, what's important is, I think, normalizing it, making people feel safe to share how they're feeling, not dismissing someone when they open up to you. And so, I always think of treating others the way I want to be treated. And so, if someone is vulnerable with me, I try and be supportive with them. And that just builds a really good system of trust where hopefully we can all just become the best versions of ourselves.
And then another one. What advice would you give to individuals who are struggling with anxiety but are hesitant to seek help or openly discuss their challenges?
I think the first thing is that you have to be really patient with yourself. Opening up is never easy. It can feel like you're taking a big chance. So start by identifying someone in your life who you think will be really receptive to your emotions and how you're feeling. If it helps, write it down first. I think that that's a huge way how I process my emotions. And once I've kind of practiced in that sense, the conversation with whoever I open up to usually goes better.
And have there been any specific techniques or coping mechanisms that you've found particularly helpful in managing your anxiety before, like huge stages like the Olympics?
I feel like when I hear you say that you get nervous or you're anxious before you compete, that's so understandable. I think one of the things that I've tried to do over the years is realize that usually I feel that way because I care so much about how it's going to go. So then you realize that you're doing something that you really love. And so boiling it all down back to the pure feelings of why you got into it, why I started skating, why you started fencing, I think that that really helps put things into perspective so that instead of getting ahead of yourself or focusing on your nerves, you can be in the moment, trust your training, and hopefully enjoy what you're doing because that's why you put in all the hard work to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's sometimes hard when I'm doing that because I think a lot of the pressure comes from like wanting to do well and then seeing other people compete and do well. So you're like, okay, well, I need to match what they're doing, which is obviously not necessarily always the right mindset to have because it's like very much on you, like how well you do.
How much of a routine do you set up for yourself before you compete? Are there ways that you try and normalize the elevated experience of competition for yourself?
Well, I mean, preparation for competitions usually start. Well, obviously, you're talking about practice for months and months up until whatever competition I'm going to, and then the night before, it's like going to bed, making sure you like take your mind off of like exactly what you're competing because really it starts the next morning, and
Mm.
then I feel like I'm the superstitious type, so I have like a very set schedule of okay, well, if my event's at this time, then I need to do exactly this right before, just to make sure it's like consistent. But I think just keeping my mind off of well, it's about growing and learning rather than just like winning all the time. It's like a good mindset to have, but of course, everyone wants to win, so it's very difficult.
It is challenging, but I think if you think about your personal growth and improvement and just trying to get better every time you do something, you can't always control the outcome. But if you can think about the long term and hitting those short term goals and things like preparation, I know people kind of joke around about being superstitious, but it's good to have things that are routine for you. And one thing that I found really helpful was visualization. And so even when I was training and the competitions were only every once in a while, I could visualize and put myself into that environment of what a competition would potentially be like. And sometimes your mind plays tricks on you. Sometimes you visualize or have a bad dream that something's going to go poorly. But then instead of shying away from that, I'd usually allow for that to happen, but then put in the extra effort to take time and visualize it going well right afterwards. Because you can manifest your put in positive energy, which will then help your performance later.
Yeah, I think that's all really helpful advice. I definitely need it before competition, so thank you.
Of course.
Um, and what advice would you give to other athletes who struggle with anxiety or performance pressure?
I feel like when athletes, especially when you're having to do something where there's coordination involved, when we get nervous, we tend to tense up. And so sometimes you have coaches who are like, okay, shake it out, be normal, loosen up. That's kind of the exact opposite of what your state of being is. So I think if you can just, one of the things that my coaches had me do was keep my shoulders up, but then roll them up and open my chest and open up myself to what I'm doing. And that was really helpful for me just because when you're anxious, time can kind of feel like a weird thing, right? Your body feels a little strange. It can be like you're not as much in control compared to training. So just doing whatever you can to ground yourself in the moment is what will allow you to perform at your highest ability.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely heard that before too. I just like it's like I don't know, but I feel like my coaches have referred to them or my teachers actually as like power poses, and I always don't think they work, but I can see where it's coming from. So,
I kind of believe in it because have you heard that someone tell you, oh, you should smile, you'll feel better, right? There are certain cues and things that you can do. If you think about dopamine, and for example, I've had this story told to me that when you go on a roller coaster, when you're exhilarated, usually your arms fly up. And so if you put your arms up, it kind of sends signals to your body to feel a certain way. So I know that when I'm anxious, I tend to let my chest come in and I try and protect myself, but starting to open yourself up and make yourself feel safe and like you're ready to go is a good place to start.
I will try that. I feel like managing my time as a student athlete is also super stressful. Like specifically when it's time to do homework, but also I have to prepare. So I can't even imagine what it's like to compete and like at your career and have that. So, what do you think are like the what do you think are the most difficult parts of managing your career and also managing your anxiety?
I feel like from what you were saying, we're always kind of dealing with external pressure or a certain amount of responsibility, whether you're balancing school and your sport. It's a lot of time management skills. And so, one of the ways that I think I cope is by being very on top of my schedule. And in that sense, also scheduling moments to take a break because it's so important. Where even if you're super motivated and you want to work hard, if you don't give yourself a break every once in a while and take care of yourself, then none of your work is going to be great. So try and give yourself grace in that way.
Um, One more question. What role has your support system played in helping you cope with your anxiety? And what advice would you give to others who may be struggling to communicate their needs to their loved ones?
I feel so fortunate that my family has been extremely supportive of me. But then in recent years, I found a really great community of friends. And one of the things that I used to struggle with was opening up to people because I didn't want to burden anyone with my issues. But what you kind of realize over time is that everyone's going through something. So as long as you find a community where you're able to share, but then also support each other equally at different times in the journey, that's just what life is about. That's what having great friends is about. So I know it can sometimes be a little scary to open yourself up to someone, but if you do it, you will find the right people to be a part of your support system.
Well, that's my last question. um, Thank you so much for your time, Maya. This has been an incredible experience.
Thank you for the great questions.